of this kind on the Capitol lawn. And we would like the whole world to know why we are meeting here. The President of the United States, as you know, who said he was getting elected to end the war, turned out to be very far from the truth. And we are standing on the Capitol steps to appeal to the members of the House of Representatives and the Senate and to say to them, under the Constitution, you can end the war. Not another dime for this war. Stand up and do your constitutional duty.
Stand up and do your constitutional duty. That was 1968, ladies and gentlemen. 1968, when the United States of America was dragged into an unjust, unbelievable, catastrophic war. Dragged into that war by politicians. Tonight, I'm going to talk about that war, and I'm going to share with you a chilling timeline, a timeline that I warned about over a year ago, a timeline that leads from Vietnam to Ukraine, a timeline that should be an indication as to where we're headed and a warning to every American across this country. But before I talk about Ukraine and Vietnam, something has happened over the past 48 hours. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. For you who have not heard about it, what's happening is Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of the United States Congress, decides that she wants to go to Taiwan. She wants to go to Taiwan to do what? To sign a peace treaty, to show strength when the government here is weak. The United States of America has been forewarned by President Xi of Communist China that at this point in time, in the history of our country, this is the worst thing we can do. I don't like bullies. I say, no, we don't yield, we don't bend to communism or communist leaders. But you make sure that you don't be the reason to give the communist Chinese a gun that they're going to fire. They have been saying all along their eyes are on Taiwan. They want a reason, an excuse. They want to do something with regard to Taiwan. And they've made it clear that if Nancy Pelosi touches down in Taiwan, it'll be catastrophic for the United States. Do I believe them? Yes. I wouldn't have believed them when Ronald Reagan was in office or George Bush or Donald Trump. But I do believe them when we have a president of the United States who is more concerned about wokeism, more concerned about storms and clouds, more concerned about electric cars than about fueling our economy. President Xi is watching closely what's going on. And now he may have the excuse he needs to defend what he believes to be the sovereignty of China with regard to Taiwan. We're living in a time, folks, when America needs an immediate change of course. It's not going to come that quick, but it will come. We can only hope and pray that people like Nancy Pelosi use their heads and decide not to do something that could cost all of us. I mean, all of us, maybe not here in the United States, but globally, cost all of us dearly. Years ago, when we had strengthened this country from the White House to the Congress, to mayors, to senators, to those sitting on school boards, when we showed great strength, nobody dare challenge the United States of America. But now we are showing weakness, a lot of weakness. And as a result, we have people like President Xi ready to take advantage of that. You know, you learn in Military 101, when you see your enemy weak, you make sure you attack that enemy before they can become strong again. President Xi of China knows full well what's going to happen in November here in this country. The United States Congress will be taken over by the Republican Party, the party that's going to be strong, the party that's going to bring America back. And then in 2024, we're going to have a Republican president. And once again, a strong America. So let's see what happens. Let's see what Nancy Pelosi is going to finally do. Is she going to call Xi's bluff? Because I don't believe it's a bluff. I believe he means what he says. We'll see what happens. Now let's get back to the prediction, if you will, that I made about the war in Ukraine, how we were going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And lo and behold, what happened this week? Well, I'm going to share with you in a moment what happened this week. Ladies and gentlemen, I said earlier, I said day in and day out, that it is absolutely imperative that we in the United States of America do not get involved in a war that we do not belong in. I repeated over and over again the words, the warning of President George Washington, the first president of the United States of America, who told us not to get involved in military conflicts overseas. He said that in his farewell address. Well, now, remember what I said? Ukraine, just like Vietnam. First send money, if that don't work. Then send military equipment, if that don't work. Then send advisors. And the United States of America is now considering sending military advisors to Ukraine. The media reported just a few days ago that members of a bipartisan congressional delegation want the Pentagon to deploy U.S. military advisors to Ukraine. Folks, that is another way of saying military troops. They cannot fool us. They did. They did in Vietnam. They fooled us. These are military advisors to count checks and to play cards and to pass out food, as they want us to believe. These are military advisors, folks, who are going to be there, in my view, to not only train, as we have been, the Ukrainian military, but to get involved in the beginning of a very long, costly war. It begins with advisors, folks. And you know what it ends? It ends with thousands of U.S. troops killed in action. Vietnam, Chapter 2, Vietnam, all over again. Now, you would think that after living through the Vietnam War, after living through what you saw on that video day in and day out, if you live through all of this, you would think politicians would think twice before they get involved in another military intervention that we simply don't belong in. I've said all along, that problem in Ukraine, that problem they have with Russia, is Europe's problem, not the problem of the United States of America. Mr. Biden, you want to fight a war on a border? Go to the Mexican-American border, where many bad people are coming into this country. I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm sure there are many good ones, but they still shouldn't be coming because it's illegal. But I believe there are terrorist cells coming through that border. I don't have any facts to that effect for you fact checkers, but I believe they're taking advantage of that. I believe there are Chinese communist spies that are crossing that border. I believe there are all sorts of espionage planning going on as people cross that border. President Trump said a lot of interesting things when he was in office. And I think one of the most interesting things is that it's not that they're so smart, it's that we're so stupid. And so here we have a situation where we have a very porous border of very bad actors coming across that are looking to truly hurt our national security. And we're sending billions of dollars, and now we're ready to send our blood, our treasure, to Ukraine. Folks, I've got to tell you something. Back during the early days of the Vietnam War, the politicians, both Republican and Democrat, and by the way, let me warn you Republicans, and I tweeted this out, I got a lot of response. We have an opportunity to take the House of Representatives. We have an opportunity to change the course of this country from the worst time that I could ever lived here to maybe some of the best times. We have a chance to do that. And you're getting yourselves involved with the Democrats over a bipartisan plan to send military troops. You could call them advisors all you want. They got a military uniform on. They are military troops. They're sailors. They're military. They're soldiers. They're military. They're airmen and airwomen. They're military. So don't hand me the politically correct term that these are just advisors. We lived through this through Vietnam. Maybe a lot of you on this bipartisan congressional delegation, maybe you were not living around during the Vietnam War. Maybe you didn't feel the cost the pain, the suffering of the people of this country. Maybe you didn't see what went on here, the rioting, the bloodshed, the killing of college students at Kent State University by National Guard troops. Maybe you didn't see that. You better do some educating of yourself, Mr. and Mrs. Congressman, who hasn't lived here that long, and find out where we were and where we ended up, because where you're sending us is where we're going to end up again. Folks, I would have never believed after all my years in the military, never believed after all my years in defending our country, which I still will defend it, never believed that I would be part of, and maybe the beginning of, an anti-war movement. I'll support any war that needs to be supported if it threatens the national security of the United States of America. I'll put my uniform back on and I'll go fight that war. But I have a duty and obligation as someone who has a lot of influence in this country, who's involved with the political process, to tell the truth. To tell the truth. Why haven't political candidates in this country, especially the Republican Party, why haven't they addressed this? I haven't heard a peep out of anybody. Why haven't they? Why haven't people, congressmen, congresswomen, all of those screaming about the past? Oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. I'm not going to go vote until we straighten this out. Why aren't you standing up thinking about the future? The past is the past. We've got to work on things that occurred in the past. I have enough confidence in the American people that everything that we believe happened will be investigated and the truth will prevail. But while we're so anchored down by the past, we're forgetting what's happening overseas. We're forgetting what's happening north of our border in Canada. We're forgetting what's happening in Mexico. You want your sons and daughters? Remember I said to the American people, my countrymen and women, remember I said this to you a few weeks ago? You better start hugging and kissing your children. Because like me, when I graduated high school, I found myself in a military uniform. That's right. 2-3 weeks out of high school, there was a draft. They were drafting people. I went and I enlisted in the Air Force. Back in the 70s, I was not in Vietnam, but I was in a lot of support groups here in the States that supported those in Vietnam. But I was in, and I went in because there was a war on. I was led to believe that we were fighting for our country, only to find out it was a political war, that we were not fighting for our country. Folks, you've got to think about this. The politicians declared war in Vietnam because they said it was part of our war against communism, that the national security of the United States of America was at stake, was in danger by the people who lived and worked in Vietnam, because the North Vietnamese were coming south to destroy Vietnam. And then they handed us a bunch of bull that we know now, that if the North took South Vietnam, there would be a domino effect. Thailand, Laos, the Philippines, maybe Japan, maybe San Francisco. That's what they fed us. And what do you think we're being fed today? History is repeating itself. I just can't get my arms around the fact that there are people in the United States who have lived during that time, who are now in government, who promise over and over and over again. And by the way, some of them, if they lived here, were in that crowd that you saw in the video at the beginning of this broadcast. My generation said it'll never, ever happen again. No more Vietnams. No more Vietnams. Well, their idea, their explanation that Vietnam was going to protect our country, that was a false narrative to justify a war. Now I'm going to share something with you very chilling. Very chilling. In America, wake up. Wake up, my brothers and sisters in America. Wake up. Knowledge is power. One thing we take pride in here at Campaign for America is that we will give you all the knowledge necessary to empower yourself to take action. You might want to think about, and I'm sure you will lose sleep over what I'm about to share with you. I'm going to show you, or at least explain to you, a parallel between the 1960s and how we led up to 50,000 young men and young women in the United States military killed in action and 100,000 plus wounded. First, folks, Vietnam, The excuse was, as I said earlier, communism. We're going to stop the communists in Vietnam. So here's what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is send them money, right? America always sends people money, right? Send money, it'll solve the problem. A guy named Obama sent money to the Iranians in the middle of the night. Remember that one? In cash, cold cash in the middle of the night to do what? To buy them off with regard to the nuclear power talks. Well, that didn't work out very well, did it? So we sent Vietnam, listen to this, folks, over $1 trillion. $1 trillion went to Vietnam in cash. Money we're talking about. $1 trillion in today's money value. 1 trillion. Well, that didn't work out very well. We gave them all this money and Lord knows what happened to it. So then we decided to send them weapons. Millions of dollars in weapons were sent to the South. They were sent to South Vietnamese military. Planes, boats, small armor, ammunition, tanks, jeeps, you name it, every bit of military hardware we sent to them to fight their own battles. Sound familiar, folks? Think about Ukraine as I'm telling you this. Well, so the South Vietnamese went and fought. And we used to get all this news. Now, when you think about this, we used to get all this news out of South Vietnam, how, the South Vietnamese were holding this hill, holding that hill, destroying the Viet Cong here, destroying the Viet Cong there. Sound familiar? Now, that didn't work out very well. I must tell you that the United States military there, they won every battle. Not too many people are aware of that. Our military performed absolutely extraordinary and won every military battle. They won the war. It was the politicians who surrendered. So now, the weapons we sent them didn't work out very well. So then, here is the chilling part. Please listen to me carefully. This is very, very important. You want to be empowered with knowledge? Here you go, mom and dad. Remember I told you hug your kids? Well, you're really going to hug them when you hear this. So then the idea comes up, let's send the South Vietnamese government advisors. What are the advisors going to do in South Vietnam? Build sheds? Build huts? What are they going to do? So President John F. Kennedy in 1960, now here's the timeline, he sent 400 advisors to Vietnam. Then in 63 to 65, he thought, well, the 400 aren't really performing that well, so why don't we send more advisors? How about 16,000 advisors? Now, they never told us, never advertised, never shared with the American people that these were military combat troops. Even back then, they were worried about being woke, politically correct. So 16,000 more advisors are sent to Vietnam between 63 and 65. And then it happens. Now listen carefully. Then it happens. 400, escalation to 16,000. Still, we couldn't overcome the Viet Cong. So then in 1964, right, in between all of this, without us knowing until later, the United States Congress authorized U.S. military involvement in the Vietnam conflict, bringing our troop level to 23,000 troops in Vietnam. 23,000 troops in Vietnam. 65, President Lyndon Johnson increased the troop levels to 184,000. 66, U.S. troops in Vietnam increased to 385,000. LBJ again in 67 increased it to 485,000. 75, the North Vietnamese overran Saigon. Saigon surrendered. The Vietnam War cost over $1 trillion in military operations, $28.5 billion in aid to South Vietnam. More than 58,000 Americans killed in action, 150,000 were wounded. The question was asked before and after that war, what was at risk for America? Where was the national security threat for the United States of America? Because when the North Vietnamese took South Vietnam, they stopped. There was no domino effect. There was never a threat to the United States of America. Why we ended up in that war is a mystery to me. Why did we go there? I don't know if there was oil, natural resources, whatever it was. Maybe somebody had this crazy idea that we were going to stop the communists from taking over the world. Nonetheless, we went. But they never gave us an answer to the question, what was the national security threat to the United States? Now, let's fast forward to now, today, in 2022, regarding Ukraine. Well, step one, just like step one in Vietnam, let's send some money. Let's send the Ukrainian government some money. It doesn't matter that they're the second most corrupt country on the planet. South Vietnam was like that way also. They were corrupt, let's face it. These are corrupt regimes, but that's all right. They want to send U.S. money there. Who knows where the money's going? But anyway, so we sent economic support, $9.4 billion, food assistance, healthcare that you can't get in America, and other aid, $7 billion, migration and refugee assistance, $1.8 billion, grants and loans for military supplies, $4.7 billion. Imagine that, grants and loans for military. What the heck are they buying? Other foreign aid, which they won't define, $1.5 billion. Administration for children and families, $0.9 billion. Assistance for Europe, Eurasia, and Central Asia, $1.1 billion. Diplomatic programs, $500 million. And enforcing sanctions, $0.3 billion. Billions and billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine. And folks, they're still fighting. Billions of dollars. And they're still fighting. Billions of dollars. Money that should have went to the American citizens, the American taxpayer, in tax relief, in our infrastructure, in everything that the Democrats had promised us. Union leaders, everything the Democrats promised you. You know, obviously, you know, I do have a little bit of a problem with unions again. I'm almost like, I know I'm mentioning it a lot. I mention it a lot because the unions in this country have a lot of power. What are you going to say after you support and reelect and elect Democrats to office? What are you going to say if we end up sending combat troops to Ukraine, if part of those makeup of combat troops is your son or daughter? Going to be happy? I don't think so. I don't think you're going to be happy. You're going to be frightened. You're going to be scared to death. You're going to worry night and day, like I did. As a military officer, a lot of people don't know this. As a military officer, I was serving with the Office of Naval Intelligence, and you know where my son was? Fighting in Iraq against Saddam Hussein's Revolutionary Guard. You want sleepless nights? You want to worry? Think about that. I remember thinking every day, I hope to God I'm not going to be picking up a piece of paper on my desk and read about killed in action and my son's name would be on it. Too many names were on those lists. Too many. And Vietnam was worse because not only did they give you names on a list, but on your TV broadcast, you're watching a nice program. You're watching maybe a play. You're watching cartoons. And all of a sudden, it was the toll, the Vietnam toll. I remember it. The number of young men and women killed in action. 500, 700, 1,000, 10,000 for 10 years. And somebody in this government, after sending all that money, decides, well, you know, we better do something a little bit more. We better send them weapons, like $12.5 billion worth of weapons. And then we're going to help them with their intelligence gathering capabilities, which is $9 billion more. Military and security assistance, $6 billion. And now we're going to send a 15th military package to Ukraine, bringing the total aid in their war again with Russia to $7 billion. Money, money, money. But here's the kicker. Here we go, folks. This is what I've been building up to. Here is the killer, if you will. The money don't work. The military hardware doesn't work. So now members of a bipartisan, meaning Republican, and Democrat congressional delegation want the Pentagon to deploy U.S. military advisors to Ukraine. It begins with advisors and ends with 50,000 plus troops killed in action. And nothing at all gained by the United States of America. So what's the fourth move? What's the fourth level of all this? The fourth level, as we mentioned here, it's not here yet, but it was here in Vietnam. The next step is to send U.S. combat troops. That would be the next level. And folks, I'll tell you something. My worry, my concern is that somebody in Washington, D.C. may decide, well, let's send more advisors like they did during Vietnam. We'll call them advisors, but they're combat troops. And at one point, there'll be so many advisors there, you're going to have to admit that we are sending U.S. troops there. So the question that needs to be answered today, like it needed to be answered back in Vietnam, is what does Ukraine have to do with U.S. national security? Can somebody out there tell me, some Democrats who are watching, some of you politicians who are watching, would you tell me somehow, some way, in any way you can, come on the show and just let us know, where is the U.S. national security being threatened by Ukraine and Russia? Where? It's a European problem. I said it over and over and over again. It's a European problem, not a problem for the United States of America to get involved in. But we have had a friend for a long time. Again, some of the little important piece of history that people forget about. We had a great friend, shoulder to shoulder with U.S. military forces. And here's something that a lot of Americans may not know. Maybe a lot of Canadians do not know. But you know that during the Vietnam War, it had, folks, considerable effects on Canada. But you know what? It was the Canadian government couldn't officially, or did not officially, participate in the war. They never did that officially. But I'll tell you how the Canadians contributed. They became part of a peacekeeping force in 1973 to do what? To enforce the Paris Peace Accords. Now, here's what the Canadian government did. Little piece of history, maybe people forgot. Maybe we were never told. The Canadian government was involved in secretly exchanging messages between the United States government and North Vietnam on behalf and at the request of the United States government. North Vietnam would not sit down with us. So Canada steps up and says, we're going to help you put an end to this war. We're going to do the best we could to help our neighbors to the south. So Canada tried to mediate between North Vietnam and the United States of America. And they were aiming for a conclusion that would allow the United States of America to leave the conflict honorably. Imagine that. Things were that bad. There was no way out. The Canadians believe they had a way out for us. They did everything they could to ensure that we would get out of Vietnam honorably. They also sent humanitarian aid to the South. Food, clothing, medicine. Our good neighbors to the north did that. And they sent medicine and other supplies to help U.S. troops heal from the wounds that they were suffering. But I'll also tell you something else. The Canadian industries, their manufacturing plants, they helped in the war effort because a lot of them sold millions of dollars of more material to our country so that we could maintain the forces that we had there. Not only did they sell a lot of it, they gave a lot of it to us, for goodness sakes. They didn't want to see their neighbors get destroyed. So the Canadians stepped up quietly, supported us diplomatically, supported us militarily. And they also supported us with their best and most valuable treasure they have, their young men. 30,000 Canadians volunteered to serve the American Armed Forces during the Vietnam War. Did you know that? 30,000 came here and joined our military to support our war effort. 134 Canadians died, and many were reporting missing in action in Vietnam. That's our neighbors. That's a true friend. Never boasted about it, never bragged about it. Not much was said about it. But when I did some digging today about some of the historical context in relation to Ukraine, I found that today. It's right here, folks. I didn't know that. So you see, education means power. And when you have the power, you empower yourselves to get involved. So where do we go from here, folks? Where do we go from here? I'm talking about the American people. Where do we go from here? See the protest you saw in that video? That happened during the war. They were protests to shut down the war, to stop the war. I believe that if there's going to be any protesting, it should be peacefully, and it should be before a war starts. Before a war starts. People could protest, and certainly they could go out and hold banners up and heighten public awareness to what's going on, like what we're doing here. We're reaching tens of thousands of people through these broadcasts. But I've always said the greatest broadcast is a well-organized telephone call or telephone calls to your elected representatives. Because right now they know they're all vulnerable. They're all scared to death as to what's going to happen to them come November. Many are going to be shown the unemployment line. But now I'm going to talk to Republicans. Boy, Republicans don't like when I do this. They don't like when I call them out. Well, I'm one of you. Except my view of the world is different than yours. My view of the world is be man enough to stand up, tell it like it is. Be tough and strong. You got a problem? Let's talk about it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of what some political operative or leader in your community is going to think of you. So they call you a name. Big deal. You're a little kid. You can't take it. How many names I'm called in a given day? My goodness. But unless you're going to stand up and maybe take a political risk, if that's the way you look at it, to do what? To save lives, to save your country. Unless you're going to do that, you don't belong in that seat. Maybe you should be thrown out. The problem we're facing is the only alternative is some communist Democrat taking that seat. Isn't it a shame? In some cases, we got to think about the lesser of two evils. That's a shame. Shouldn't be that way. Should not be that way, especially in relation to this topic of possibly heading towards another Vietnam. You know what bothers me too, folks? This is the What Bother Me episode. What bothers me episode of Lieutenant Rogers. What bothers me also is that I'm really yet to see any media figure out what's going on here. I mean, some may have talked about it, but this was a trigger for me. Got to be a trigger. Some of you in the media, I know you watch these broadcasts. You might want to look into this, see what's going on here. Look at what's going on and compare it to Vietnam. Compare it to Vietnam. And you're going to see a pattern here that is going to drag us into another Vietnam. So, listen, my kids are grown. They've all been in the military. I've got grandchildren. I don't want to see them in a war that will never end and only end with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So what we need to do as a country here in America and our allies and friends is stick together and continue to fight. And there is what I call the blessed hope, folks. I mean it. With all the gloom and doom we have around us, there's still hope because we're still here. We're still fighting. You want to see the results of hope? You want to see the results of faith? You want to see the results of prayer? Thursday night, special broadcast. We're starting at 6 o'clock p.m. Please spread the word. Remember Pastor Arthur? He's going to be with us next Thursday night, special time, 6 o'clock p.m. at Money Air Live. And we're going to be able to show you through his words and how he stood strong with the Canadian people and got him released from jail and got his charges dropped. That was the beginning of the restoration of freedom and liberty in Canada. The road is long, going to be tough. We're going to have a lot of potholes in it, but we're going to win. And here in America, we will do the same thing. But we have to. In this country, the United States, we have to stop fighting with each other. We have to stop talking down on each other. We have to start talking with each other. We have to start working, and I'm speaking to Republicans now, together. I've lost hope with the Democrat communists. They got to solve their own problems. They're evil. That's part of the evil empire. I'm talking about my fellow Republicans. You got to stop. You got to stop this talking at each other, condemning each other. Because a person votes on one issue that you don't like, the other 99 issues that they supported, because of that one issue, you call them names? You try to remove them from the party? Are you kidding me? Now, there are reasons. I believe some Republicans should be ousted, disenfranchised from the party, but not when they are performing as true conservatives. Do you know, under today's opinions of a lot of Republicans, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, those guys back then in the 1700s, most of them would be called rhinos, Republicans in name only. You know, Reagan would be called a rhino today. Now, I'm going to say something. I know some people are going to get bent out of shape. Too bad. We do a lot of finger pointing at the Democrats, rightfully and justifiably so, the extremists in the Democrat Party. We have extremists in our Republican Party. People who go crazy with these wild theories that just don't exist. Why? We have the truth on our side. All we got to do is stand on the truth. We've got a good number of people looking into all of the issues that occurred in the past. Smart, intelligent people. I've talked to some of them who you've never heard of. A lot of things going on, folks, that are going to be corrected as we move forward. But instead of looking backward, we got to look forward. We got to move forward. Because if we don't, we're going to be stuck. And when you're stuck, you don't bend. And when you don't bend, you break. So, after hearing what I had to say about the Vietnam syndrome tonight, after hearing what I had to say about coming together and working together as a Republican Party that loves America, we ought to think about it. I'm asking you to think about it. Get mad at me, yell at me, scream at me, send me nasty letters, call me names, that's fine. But at the end of the day, when you calm down, do what's right, not for me, not for a candidate for office, not for any human being on earth, but do what's right for your country. Do what's right. And you'll find out that when you do what's right for America, or you do what's right for Canada, or you do what's right for any freedom-loving country, that you'll always win and that they will lose. All right, folks, so that's it. So I would like to say to you that it was an interesting topic tonight. It's something that I've been wanting to talk about. I'm glad I did. I see we got a heck of a lot of response. So I want to congratulate the people of Canada for the victories. Little ones add up to big ones. Pastor Arthur, who'll be on Thursday night, 6:00 p.m., not 7. And we'll advertise that during the week. My fellow Americans, we have been out. My wife and I and others, we've been out campaigning here in the state of New Jersey, working hard to get congressmen and congresswomen on the Republican Conservative Party elected to office. Maybe we're going to be going back to Florida before November, maybe one trip to Texas again. But we're going to do the best we could to do our part to help the people of the United States of America and in effect to help the people of Canada who are now married to us. You know, they've been married to us, as evidenced here, what they did in Vietnam, standing shoulder to shoulder with us. We're not going to forget the Canadian people, that's for sure. So that's it, folks. So I thank you all for joining me tonight. So now I'm going to ask you to do something. I hate this part, but you know what? You got to do it. Where are we? Right here. Okay. There's our website. Now, folks, I want to thank you very much. Those of you who have responded, I want to thank you very much for giving us a contribution. No matter how big or small, doesn't matter. Every little bit helps. We've been able to get our research teams together, equipment we need. We've been able to send thousands and thousands of people information that they would have never had. And as a result, by the way, as a result of the information we began to broadcast in relation to how the Canadian people began to address their problems the peaceful way they did, that gave birth to all kinds of different groups around the world, and here in the United States especially, who decided, wow, you know what? That worked out pretty well for them. Why don't we try that? So there's a lot going on that you're not hearing about. And as time passes on, we're going to hear about that. We're going to bring it here and get it to you. We're on 6 multimedia platforms now. 6. And I expect to expand it more and more. All because of you, the people. That's it, folks. Thank you very much for joining me. Remember, campaignforamerica.com. Go to our website. You'll see a little bar that says donation. We'd appreciate it. And look at, as I always say, your bills first, your mortgage first, your kids first, family first, God first. Don't forget God. And then your family. And then think about us as we move forward. See you Thursday night, 6 p.m. here on the Patriot Desk. God bless you all. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers.